And they say, again, as I tell you, beyond the government, Nigerians have to insist now on prosecution of all these cases that have disgraced the country.
Some Nigerians say they don't see this government as having the will to go into Halliburton because it seemed to be one of the untouchables cases.
No, I think it's beyond the government.
Beyond this government?
If you recall, the president had gone to the United States, had met with President Obama, and I told the whole world, $150 billion has been stolen from our country in the last 10 years. And we want to recover them for development. And we want to recover the money for development. And those countries, the heads of those governments have said, oh, we're going to collaborate with you. Of course, the Halliburton case is one of the cases that have to be reopened. Even for those governments to believe that we mean well and that you are committed to the fight against corruption.
No, but how is it beyond this government specifically? I mean, what have they done specifically about that case for us to come to that conclusion?
No, what I'm saying is this. You are asking for assistance from foreign countries. All those cases in which those countries have prosecuted people in their own countries and have recovered huge sums of money cannot be allowed to remain unchallenged here. And that is why what I mean by saying is beyond, because you cannot be asking foreign countries to assist in the recovering of your looted wealth while you are also turning the other eye with respect to certain areas. This country can make over $2 billion from the Halliburton scandal. Oh yes. Apart from recovering the money from those who really stole it, you also can sue those banks involved for warehousing stolen money.
For instance, now this gets for instance, now you've talked about the financial institutions, the banks now,
yes.
And a while ago we talked about the media. For this case and a couple of other cases happening in Nigeria, should we also be looking towards the banks? Because quite almost on a weekly basis, huge amounts are being mentioned, and definitely we have some form of warehouse for these monies. Should we also be looking at them, knowing full well that there is a law that says that you should blow the whistle if you have certain amount of money exceeding a certain amount coming into the banks? Have they been doing that with such deposits coming from some of these individuals?
Now, I have often challenged the Transparency International, as well as Western governments that accuse Nigeria of corruption. And my position is this: it takes two to tango. If you make it impossible for your financial institutions, including the banks, to warehouse stolen money from Africa and other third world countries, the level of corruption will not be this high. And then the money can be domesticated for development, even if you have to domesticate corruption, yeah. But where you have banks, and in this instance, and I do hope that this government will make an example of these banks, some of the funds that were removed from Nigeria through the office of the NSA have been located in some foreign banks. Apart from getting court orders to repatriate the money, you must also challenge those banks by suing them, dragging them to court for violating the money laundering laws in those countries, by not knowing their customers or pretending not to know their customers. And this should apply to the Abacha loot. And I have told the government, you cannot simply say you are returning money which you have kept illegally for 10, 15 years, and we should clap for you. While we take back the money, there are two issues that have to be taken up. One, we must claim the interest. Secondly, you must sue those banks to pay damages for warehousing money that was meant for development here.
But they should also tell us.
And if the government is not willing, some of the victims can really take up this matter.
But they should also tell us how much they recovered so far, what they intend to do with the money, and such information.
Again, I've suggested that there has to be a special account, dedicated account, for all the funds that are recovered, so that at the end of the day, it won't be like the Abacha loot that has been relooted. We can identify projects that are going to be executed with the funds that have been recovered.
I'm just wondering, though, what really, you say that you see the political will to fight corruption in this government, and that's what has renewed your hope in the fight against corruption. But then, what about the courts?
No, that's not the only thing that has renewed my hope.
Before you tell me the other things, what about the courts, which is where a lot of people fear that these corruption cases will die?
That's an interesting area. There's no doubt that the courts are the theaters of this war. The EFCC or the ICPC may have the best, investigation reports. But if the courts are not going to change, we may run to problem. But again, you must be fair to our courts.
You said change.
Yeah.
How?
The attitude must change. And again, it depends on the will of the government. Whereas, between 2003 and 2007, nobody who was standing trial for serious cases of fraud or corruption was granted bail by our courts. Not one. Go and find out. A former Inspector General of Police, a former governor, bank executives, and the rest were not granted bail.
They are not bailable offenses.
No, they were bailable, but the court looked at the gravity of the offenses. But with the Bori case, in December 2007, because the government wasn't serious, wasn't committed to fighting corruption, the policy changed. And so today, it has become automatic now for every accused person standing trial to be granted bail.
Is it a policy?
It is, as it were. You can have judicial policy. That has to change. For instance, since 1970, no armed robbery suspect has been admitted to bail in Nigeria. The same principle applies to terrorism cases likely. Because of the dangerous implications of such offenses, the court simply will not grant bail. Now we must now look at the effect of corruption on the society and have a new thinking. The courts, again I must say, the Supreme Court in particular, has given leadership in terms of fighting corruption. You can go and look at all the cases. Attorney General of the state and Attorney General of the Federation, when there was an attempt to have the law setting up the ICPC declared illegal, the Supreme Court said, no, this law has been properly made to deal with corrupt practices in our country. There were other cases to nullify the law setting up the EFCC. The Supreme Court said, no. And you can go on and on and on. The Supreme Court also said, in the case of Awemi and IGP, that even though the president and governors cannot be arrested or prosecuted while in office, but they can be investigated. So when you now have some high courts now granting interlocutory or perpetual injunctions that certain cases of corruption cannot be investigated, the suspect cannot be arrested or prosecuted, you wonder where this is coming from. It is totally against the doctrine of stare decisis that requires lower courts to abide by the decisions of the highest court of the land, the Supreme Court.
Now we're getting to see only one sector, for instance, and you say it is bizarre and it is sickening. We're talking about security and the issue of security votes. It has always been shown.
No, this is not security vote. No. If it's a security fund, I mean money meant to procure arms and armament
it's under security.
To fight insurgency. No, when you say security vote in Nigeria, there's what they call security vote. Not accounted for, by certain officials of government. But this was security fund, appropriated.
I'm getting a...
Appropriated, $2.1 billion, and contrary to what you guys say.
When you say appropriated,
$643 billion.
When you say appropriated,
by the National Assembly.
A moment here. We have also seen an alleged letter written by the former coordinating minister of the economy, saying that with the permission of the president, some certain amounts of money were disbursed. Does that also come under appropriation? No, that was not even investigated by the
Arms Procurement Panel. It was not investigated. That came up when the Premium Times reported that 68 billion naira was taken from the central bank